franktalks.com.
Hi, this is Maureen Marovitch, documentary filmmaker, and you're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles.
You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles, and I'm Frank because I have to be. In studio today we have Maureen Marovitch, a documentary filmmaker, and we're going to be talking about the polyamorous lifestyle, as well as a documentary that she and her partner David were a part of. Welcome to studio, Maureen.
Well, thank you very much.
All right, let's start off with where you were born and different elements in your life that led you to become a documentary filmmaker.
Oh, well, okay. No, I was born in Montreal, and the path to documentary filmmaking was not that circuitous. I started studying graphic design and illustration at Dawson College, and just missed doing a lot of the other elements of being creative. I missed doing writing and photography and video, and so after 2 years I went to communication studies at Concordia and got a chance to put all those elements together, and graduated and spent a couple of years as a cashier and other various jobs trying to figure out how to make what I had learned in school, all the fun and interesting things I had learned about making films, how to put them into practice, and did my first film thereafter with a partner that I'd met. And it just was very fortuitous that it went on to play on news. It was called Long Shots. It was a documentary with a group of young people who were trying to get out of street life. And they did a video workshop with us where we documented their process, and they made short films. And that film just did really well and won a number of awards, and was just a really great experience for us and for the people involved. And that got it all going. So I actually was planning on being a fiction filmmaker and kind of slipped into documentary and have mostly stayed there. Yeah.
And how long did this whole process take from the time that you finished school to the time when you were regularly making films?
Well, I don't know if you ever regularly make films. It's kind of an irregular sort of profession, being a documentary filmmaker, because it's not, I guess being any, and maybe most of the arts, it's kind of a challenge. It's sort of somewhere between a business and an art, and it's not it takes a while to often to raise the funds or to get projects off the ground. But we usually do manage to do a film every year or two. Sometimes they're films we're very passionately, personally involved in, and sometimes they're things that we're commissioned to do by other or work with other companies, and they're often things we're quite fascinated by, but they may not come from us. But I think the first film, I graduated in '91, and my first documentary came out in '94. So that's actually a pretty good rate, I would say, to get started. And since then, I've been working on a number of films and some television shows and all that kind of thing.
And if you had the choice, would you prefer to do documentary films on a full-time basis if that opportunity became available?
Documentary films well, I do some form, I guess, related. If it's not exactly a documentary, it's nonfiction television, or I work a lot on various projects, other people's projects, sometimes as a researcher or a writer, or sometimes I'll be hired as a director. So I still get to work in the field. Would they always be my projects? Often, but sometimes there's a lot to learn by working on other people's productions as well. So I actually kind of am quite happy that I get a chance to do that. So I think 3/4 of the time would be pretty good. Yeah.
Let's talk about a very specific documentary film that you produced.
Sure.
It was called When Two Won't Do.
That's right.
And you were featured in this documentary.
Right. That's an unusual project for us. Most of the time, my partner David, Finch, and I, who is, I guess, a life partner, I would say, and as well as my filmmaking and partner in Pictureless Productions, we mostly make films about other people. Train the camera on other subjects, and When Two Won't Do was a documentary, a personal documentary. We were quite involved in the film on camera, as well as being the people behind the camera. And that film looks at our quest, him being very bent on monogamy, and at the time I was very bent on not doing monogamy, and it was kind of a big conflict in our relationship, as you might imagine. And rather than break up, we decided we were going to go on this filmic quest. We were going to try to figure out how other people did non-monogamous relationships, which meant everything from open relationships to swinging to something called polyamory, which is the idea of being able to have loving relationships with more than one person at a time, openly. David was very skeptical about the people we're going to meet, and he didn't think many of these lifestyles could work. And if they could, he didn't think they could work for us. I was kind of really interested to see what we would discover, and so off we went on a 2-year quest, making the film at the same time.
Now, when you started making this film, from the get-go, were you planning to make it a film about your relationship?
No, actually, when I originally approached Dave with the idea, because sometimes one of us will have an idea, and then the job is to convince the other person it would be a great idea for a film, and even though we want to spend 2 years working on it. When I first approached Dave with the idea, it was more of a general documentary about polyamory and what it is, and following people who were living this kind of lifestyle of having a group family or more than one love in their life. And we started actually filming with that idea because we didn't think we were terribly interesting. I mean, I don't know if we still were, but we just thought we were, we didn't really see ourselves as characters in the film. And it was actually one of our early cameramen, who's a friend of ours as well, Saul Pincus, who's now an editor actually, but at the time he was doing camera, who said, he was sort of watching us behind the camera, what was going on in our life, and he said, you really should be filming yourself, you're kind of missing part of it. We decided, well, we'll try to do a little bit of filming with our own life, and if it's not very interesting, no one says we have to use it. And as time went on, it became a larger part of the film, and in fact, it went from being us just maybe narrators at best to, I guess we're probably about half the film by the end of it, because I guess what happened in lives and people we were connected with really quite took over in a way.
I have to tell you that it's incredibly intriguing that your relationship is one where you, being the woman, is the one that wanted more than one partner.
Right.
And your life partner, David, the man, wanting monogamy.
Right, yeah.
And what do you think of that criticism?
I've heard that comment before, that people think it sounds kind of counterintuitive. They imagine that men are the ones who would be, and women would be the ones wanting monogamy and stability in a relationship, and they, usually cite, raising a family, and that men are kind of more apt to wander or have that instinct.
And that's the stereotype that's constantly promoted, and here you are, you're a real-life couple, and those stereotypical roles are now reversed. Yes,
I can speak about polyamory and just the people I've met, and the founder of a magazine called Loving More, who also is female. Ryan, I know it sounds like it's a male name, but Ryan Nearing is a woman who and her partner at the time, Deborah Annapol, who has since gone on to write books on the subject, Dr. Deborah Annapol, and who are two women who sort of did a lot of organizing in the movement back in the 80s. And I think perhaps women, I think perhaps it's a stereotype or an image that maybe, as you might say, is maybe not quite accurate. I think a lot of science has gone with the idea, or a lot of, whether it's psychology or biological anthropology, is the idea that as you just said, that men are more oriented towards that. But maybe there's some good biological reasons for men to have more than one partner. And it's a whole fascinating discussion about anthropology, about you can get into why or what is it. But anyway, all I'm going to say is that I don't think I'm that uncommon, but it's definitely it breaks the stereotype for sure.
And the other thing I find very intriguing about your relationship is that, whereas you brought up the whole idea of wanting a more open relationship, your partner David wanted a monogamous one, rather than simply end a relationship, you went ahead and tried to find a way to make your relationship work.
We did, although before we started filming, I should mention there were a couple of times we did break up over it, and we, because it just seemed untenable. It just, Dave thought, well, obviously you're interested in somebody else. This is not working, and I would try to explain how I still loved him, and it didn't sink in for a while. And understandably, that's kind of not the way our model of relationships works in our society.
Mm-hmm.
And we did break up a couple of times, and both times decided we're still working together and close friends, and still loved each other, and tried again. And it's David's credit, I think, that he was open-minded enough to say, okay, all right, let's see if anybody else is doing this, and let me see if maybe there's some validity to this. And so I credit him for going against the grain of what a lot of people said. That even friends would say, "You're crazy. Why would you want to do this?"
When did you first learn about the idea of an open relationship?
Well, I actually heard of polyamory about a couple of years before I started making the film, back in '94. Mm-hmm. When I met someone who at a conference, a TV conference of all things, nothing to do with polyamory, who I thought was really quite interesting. At that time, I was kind of dating David on and off, and but this person was very flirtatious and interested. I was interested, but I found that he was married, and I was confused. I thought he was trying to cheat on his wife, and he said, "Oh no, my wife knows, that we have this kind of relationship. It's where we can have other partners." And I was skeptical. He said, "Do you want to call my wife?" I was like, "Well, I'm not sure about that. Let me think about it." And I looked it up and heard that, found out there was this word polyamory and people who believed this. And at the time, I kind of filed it away for future reference, but didn't really get into that kind of relationship until a little bit later. But I had heard of it, so I knew it was out there.
And when you first brought up the idea of polyamory with David, did you believe at the time that it could work, or was it just sort of a social experiment?
You mean that other people did, that we wouldn't try ourselves?
Uh-huh.
Did I believe it could work? I'm trying to think now. No, I knew there were people who did it. Did I think that we'd be one of them? Pretty soon after, I think we did. I think that was one of our. We did. I did try to go out with more than one person. And in the past, it had happened where I felt strongly about two people. And earlier on, I had, but I felt I had to break up with one of them. It just wasn't fair.
Uh-huh.
So I kind of had an inkling that this might work for me. That this made sense deep down. That it was a possibility. Perhaps David wasn't convinced so for quite a while.
Was there ever a time in your past, in the early phases when you first started dating, where the idea of polyamory really did not appeal to you?
Well, when we first started dating, this is back in 1991. I knew nothing about polyamory, and I just was kind of, as most people are, I guess, serial monogamists. You are with someone until either you're not, until it doesn't work out, or you meet someone that you think might work better, and then people, kind of hop to another partner. I mean, it sounds cruel, but it doesn't, not literally like that. But they start getting interested in someone else, and the original partner gets a little less interesting, and so I guess I was kind of typical that way. But I did early on dating David. What started, someone else was very interested, and I had this confusion even then over. Now I had two people I liked, and what do I do? Well, I at that time I said I better stick with David because we've been going out for 6 months already, and it's kind of unfair to, I guess, to switch like that.
Right.
But because I knew that I didn't, think there was any way you could see two people, even if they were both great guys or great, depending if you're straight or not. But anyway, so I guess it, early on, the first couple of years, I just thought that I was kind of defective, so I just couldn't do monogamy properly. Some people might still say that if they're very firm believers in monogamy, I suppose. There's a funny, just a really quick thing, but we didn't end up using it in the documentary, but we did sort of a kind of a cocktail, like discussion with two couples who were married at the time, who were both very, one couple was very staunchly monogamous, and the other couple was kind of questioning us quite heavily. One person was interested in non-monogamy, the other wasn't. But they were people our age who were married at the time. And the funny thing is, we just were reflecting today that of those three couples, we're the only ones still together, and the monogamous couples aren't. That's kind of a funny thought.
Well, that actually is, that's a common story where people in alternative lifestyles can actually make something last longer than those who follow a traditional monogamous path. And it does not mean that monogamy is wrong or that it doesn't work as well, because there are monogamous couples who stand the test of time.
Sure.
But it is interesting that those people who will claim that, there is that only one path, that one way, don't seem to be able to do any better than those who try alternative methods.
Yes, that was kind of, I guess, our point at the time was that, that there isn't necessarily one model that works for everybody.
You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles, and we'll be back right after this.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. Ladies, do you want the man in your life to understand you on your level? Do you want your man to be able to listen to and address all of your emotional needs? Show him how much you really want your relationship to be the best it can be. Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test makes a perfect gift. The book, written by a man, for men, is endorsed by every woman that reads it. This book is a guide for men to understand exactly what a woman means when she speaks. Is that worth changing your life forever? Buy this book at franktalks.com now.
From Loser to Seducer is the story of Frank B. Kerman. This book marks the triumph of a nice guy over most of his inner demons. This includes going from being a loser to managing 5 lovers at the same time, his first Valentine's date with 2 women at the same time, and getting back the one that got away. Want to learn how you can change your life? Buy this book at franktalks.com.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by the book, I'm a Man, That's My Job, The Philosophy of a Seducer. Ladies, have you ever wondered where all the real men have gone? Do you turn to your women friends because you cannot find a true man in your life? Do you want the man in your life to step up and know what it means to be a man that can make you feel like the woman that you are? Are you tired of mothering the men you date? Give these boys the gift of manhood. The book, I'm a Man, That's My Job, teaches men to create their own seduction persona, personal inner game, and how to take the lead in a relationship. Buy this book now at franktalks.com.
You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles, and I'm Frank because I have to be. We're in studio today with Maureen Marovitch, who is a documentary filmmaker who did a documentary about her relationship with her partner David and their open relationship. Welcome back to studio, Maureen.
Yeah, thank you very much, Frank.
All right, let's talk about the documentary process. You had a crew practically living with you, following your every move. What is that like?
It sounds a bit like reality television, which was actually before the reality television trend. We filmed from end of 97 to 2000. Maybe it was a bit easier for us in a way because we were the directors of the film. So sometimes we were the documentary crew. We were all of it, me and David, and filming each other or people around us. Sometimes we actually did have a documentary crew outside of us. But we didn't have 24-hour-a-day cameras, thank goodness. We were able to turn them off. But it was a strange process. Sometimes David and I might be starting an argument, a real genuine argument. I'd say, you know what, stop. We have to stop. I have to go to the camera and record this. This is really important. That kind of thing where you're sort of living your life at the same time you're looking at it as an outsider, and how would this be part of a larger documentary? It was a very strange phenomena that I was very happy when it ended. And I have to say, the only thing we film now on videotape is we have a baby now, a dog 2-year-old, and she's the only thing that pretty much gets videotaped. We don't bother with our conversations anymore.
Were you ever intimidated by the equipment being around recording the conversations?
That's a good question. That's something I always wondered about people I'm filming myself. How much does the camera affect them? Can people really forget it's there? And I could never forget it's there. I don't imagine anybody does. But I think, pretty early on, we and probably most of the people we film decide that they're just going to be themselves and let the camera roll. And I know I can just appreciate how much trust anybody we film has to have in us to do that. In our case, we're the directors. We know no matter how horrible something is we say or how raw or emotional, there is always that option to get edited out. We took didn't take that way. We had tough editors who wouldn't let us do that if we wanted to. But it's challenging to know there's a camera watching you and to just try to ignore that and just say what you would normally say. Sometimes it actually prompted us to go deeper, because with that camera in hand, I would ask David questions I might not normally go to. I would actually probe deeper, because I knew as a documentary filmmaker I would ask this of a subject. I might not normally ask this of my boyfriend or my partner, but I would ask this if I had to make a good film. So I would go that extra step, I think. And I think it was good for a relationship, actually.
Really? You didn't find that it put an additional pressure on the relationship?
It sounds crazy. I know it sounds crazy. It did put a kind of pressure, but I guess maybe we, as other people do, you kind of rise to it. We did, and I think it allowed us to be extra honest and to ask those tough questions that maybe in a normal relationship with no camera there I would have skirted, or we would have skirted around. Because it's easy to avoid. I think in any relationship, it's easy to avoid talking about tough things. If it's hard or painful or just tough, you don't want to do it. And here, I had a reason. I had to. I couldn't make the film without asking those tough or doing those tough moments.
And something that you've already answered it, that you said you had tough editors. I was just curious as to how subjective it is to be the directors of the documentary as well as the subjects.
It's not at all subjective. It was a personal documentary, but I think it helped a lot that we had two editors who were not us, who could, and who weren't even polyamorous to start with. Seth Poulin and Susan Shanks. Susan's a really experienced editor. Seth is just starting out at the time, but they were great. Sometimes I might say, this isn't really that important, or we don't need this. And they say, what do you mean this is? And we're going to put this in, or vice versa. I would think something was just so interesting, and they'd say, it's not as important as you think it is. And that's in any film, that's good to have an extra set of eyes and objective look at your material. That is especially useful in a personal documentary, when you might be tempted to gloss over something that's tough, or not want to reveal something about yourself, and someone says, I think we need to use this scene. I know it's hard, but I think you need to use it.
How much creative control did you really give your editors to decide what goes in and what doesn't?
Well, being the director, you get to be, it's like a dictator. It's almost about like dictator. You get to have the final say, but I guess David and I really, editors to us really do make up about half the film. You come with this, in our case, we came with about 80-something hours of material, a huge amount,
Wow.
and they help whittle that down into a crafted 90-minute film with you, and they're a big part of the process.
Is there anything that you videotaped that did not make it into the film that in retrospect you kind of wish you had left in?
Not a lot, although I should mention we now have a new DVD version of the film, which we didn't have until just this year, just into 2005. That's available on our website, which is kind of neat because it does have a few extra scenes that we just didn't have room for in the film.
Oh, okay.
And it has updates on people who were in the film, because we're always asked, what happened to so-and-so? Did that family stay together? And so we contacted back anyone we were in touch with or kept in touch with, and have new updated photos and information, which is kind of neat, I think.
What's your website where people can check out that DVD?
Sure, yeah, it's really simple. It's www.picturethis, so P-I-C-T, picture on the wall, T-H-I-S, all one word, .ca. So picturethis.ca.
Let's talk about some of the people that you met on your journey of discovering alternative lifestyles. Who are some of the more memorable people you interviewed?
Gosh, there are a lot of memorable people, but definitely the ones who stand out. There's a family in San Jose that features in the film of 4 adults and a child that they had. They're 2 married couples, and a wife of one couple and a husband of the other had a baby, and they all raised a child together. And they were very memorable for being a really sane, positive example of a polyamorous family that had some tough times, but has stuck together and created a really nice family unit. It's a bisexual couple. It's quite complicated in a sense, but it's also very simple because they just believe that they're kind of a family. So they're really memorable, and they were quite inspiring to us, actually.
And are they one of the families that you have updates for on your DVD?
They do. In the film, when we filmed with them, they were one of the first families we filmed with back in '98, And we have an update now, 7 years later, and they're still together, the four of them, and their daughter, who was just 1, is now 8, and it's really nice to hear they're still together and growing and changing, and but still very dedicated to, being together and sharing their lives.
So that's 2 men, 2 women, and there's 2 married couples in that?
There are 2 married couples, yes. And I guess they call themselves co-husbands, co-wives. Some kind of Mormon. They're not Mormon, though, I should mention that. But it just almost sounds like it. But they're a family, they call themselves.
And you go into depth about how they work out their interpersonal relationships.
They were pretty honest about everything from, their finances to their sleeping arrangements to the difficulty they had when the woman got pregnant and the other woman was not sure that they wanted to she already had a grown child. She didn't know if she wanted to have a baby in the house again, and how hard that was to work that out. So they're pretty honest about and how rocky it was when that pregnancy came to light, and so that they're honest that it's not always easy and lovey-dovey, and they're a neat example, I think.
What about because in the documentary, you and David visit a swingers convention.
We do, yeah.
And what was that like?
We went to Lifestyles, which is, I guess, probably the biggest, as far as I know, in North America. It used to be I think it's still in Las Vegas. The year we went, there were, I believe, 2,000 couples, and you have to go as a couple to this particular event, as a swinging often is. That was fascinating, eye-opening, overwhelming, actually, to not having attended any swingers event, to go to a 3-day convention with 2,000 people is pretty quick immersion. I guess through that process we discovered it was really not what we were looking for. I think David already had that sense, and possibly that I did too, but it was because it's very different. Swinging is... and for people who choose it, it's perfectly suited to what they want. They're often looking for a way to keep a monogamous connection emotionally, but they want to have that sort of sexual experimentation or adventure outside of their couple. But generally, they don't really want that emotional connection or beyond maybe a friendship. Whereas I guess what we were looking for, polyamory, is more of kind of a loving, if not committed, move in for the rest of your life thing. It is more of a loving kind of long-term thing. And we just probably weren't really comfortable with, hi, my name is Bob, want to kind of thing. Oh, sorry, can I say that on your show?
No, we'll have to bleep that out.
Okay, hi, my name is Bob, do you want to have sex now, kind of thing. This is my wife, Mary, and that just wasn't what we were looking for, or what I was looking for, even. It sounded great in theory, but in reality it really wasn't what we were, It sounds like a great fantasy, but it wasn't what we wanted in real life.
I remember watching the documentary for the first time, and thinking, David really did not look happy with the whole process, because he really, he was doing it looked like for you. And I was just imagining, here's a guy, he's really trying, he's trying to understand. And in the documentary, you also talk about your second partner.
Yes.
I believe his name is Will.
Right.
How long have you been seeing Will now?
Now it's 7.5 years, actually.
So, and how long have you been with David?
David and I have been 14 years, although I should mention we've only moved in 8 years ago, but we were dating off and on before that for about, what does that subtract? 6 years.
Alright, so you were dating for about 6 years, you moved in together for the last 8 years.
That's right.
And a year after moving in together is when you met Will, and have been with Will ever since as well.
I actually met Will before David and I moved in, but we were kind of just friends at that point. But yes, close enough. You got that chronology there, yeah.
Okay. And I remember watching this documentary and watching a friendship develop between Will and Dave. And that, how did that affect you when the two of them just seemed to be getting along?
That was quite amazing. Quite a wonderful transformation. David being rather suspicious of Will, or not terribly pleased. And you're right, he does look uncomfortable through a lot of the film, because it, I think he was doing it reluctantly. I'm going to go along with this, and hopefully she'll straighten out at some point. Instead, I guess through the process of the film, he decided that maybe it wasn't as crazy as he thought. He even, kind of has a brief foray at that time into maybe I could do this when someone's interested in him. But the friendship with Will was kind of a neat bonus, and they still are, friends to this day, which is nice. It kind of makes it a lot more comfortable for me, and it's kind of more what I was looking for. I didn't want an antagonistic relationship with someone I'm seeing. It wouldn't work in the long term.
Speaking of antagonistic relationship,
yes.
There was what appeared to be some very uncomfortable tension between Will's wife, who appears in the documentary, and yourself.
Yes.
And when that was happening and the cameras were rolling, what was going through your mind when, you have to be the documentary filmmaker and allow this to be filmed and to see it through? And, here you are with your first partner, David, your second partner, Will's wife, who is not pleased with the whole situation. And, what was that like for you to be in the middle of all that?
Very challenging. As a filmmaker, when things are heating up and there's conflict, that's a great thing. What happens? You're super. You don't want, a quiet, dull film where everybody is pleasant all the time. But as a real person living it, it's not very amusing. It was.
Were you at all conflicted with, part of you saying, "Oh, this is so great," and the other part of you saying, "Oh man, what have I gotten myself into?"
Yeah, actually, there is a lot of that because, I really don't want to tell people the entire story of the film because as I've told, I think I mentioned you once before when, in one of our chats, I just hate knowing the entire film before I try to go out and see it. And I do hope that some people will be interested to see the documentary and, either agree with it or just argue about it, or it's a great date film. But it was a really hard process because it was a very tumultuous time. And we considered, a number of times we considered stopping the filming because it just seemed like it was not helping the relationship. It was not helping the relationship between Will and Robin. There were there's some really dark times, and we offered Will the chance to stop filming, to back out, and together, and then later Will decided he wanted to continue filming for a number of reasons, because they believed in the film and they thought people should see that it does have problems. It's not an ideal. There's no ideal lifestyle. This isn't it either, and these are some of the challenges you're going to face.
You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles, and we'll be back right after this.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. Ladies, do you want the man in your life to understand you on your level? Do you want your man to be able to listen to and address all of your emotional needs? Show him how much you really want your relationship to be the best it can be. Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test makes the perfect gift. The book, written by a man, for men, is endorsed by every woman that reads it. This book is a guide for men to understand exactly what a woman means when she speaks. Is that worth changing your life forever? Buy this book at franktalks.com now.
From Loser to Seducer is the story of Frank B. Kermit. This book marks the triumph of a nice guy over most of his inner demons. This includes going from being a loser to managing 5 lovers at the same time, his first Valentine's date with 2 women at the same time, and getting back the one that got away. Want to learn how you can change your life? Buy this book at franktalks.com.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by the book, I'm a Man, That's My Job, The Philosophy of a Seducer. Ladies, have you ever wondered where all the real men have gone? Do you turn to your women friends because you cannot find a true man in your life? Do you want the man in your life to step up and know what it means to be a man that can make you feel like the woman that you are? Are you tired of mothering the men you date? Give these boys the gift of manhood. The book, I'm a Man, That's My Job, teaches men to create their own seduction persona, personal inner game, and how to take the lead in a relationship. Buy this book now at franktalks.com.
You're listening to Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles, and I'm Frank because I have to be. We're in studio with Maureen Marovitch. She is a documentary filmmaker who did a documentary on her polyamorous relationship with her partner, David. Welcome back, Maureen.
Right, thank you, Frank.
Let's talk a little bit about the lifestyle of someone who is polyamorous. Firstly, what are some of the challenges that you face being openly polyamorous?
The challenges. Well, I guess it's the challenge of any kind of alternative lifestyle in a world that is oriented in a different fashion, a different way. There's just not that many polyamorous people out there, or if there are, they're keeping very silent. So I guess people just assume that we're a monogamous couple, and I don't. We have a film out there. It's on our website, but I don't. Don't have it emblazoned across my chest, or a tattooed or T-shirt, or. So it's it's not something that I would normally bring up in casual conversation. Just people don't necessarily need to know who I do or don't have a sexual or romantic relationship with. But so but it does come up sometimes, and people who are our friends, are quite comfortable with it. I have to say the majority of our friends are not in open or polyamorous relationships, but they're pretty accepting. And that's what friends are about. Family is a bit tougher. Some of my family is very accepting. Some of David's family is very accepting, I should say. Some of my family has a hard time with it. So we unfortunately just couldn't bring my other partner to events. It just makes my parents too uncomfortable, for example. So, there are some challenges. I mean, perhaps not, it's not a lot of overt prejudice or anything, but it's just, I like to be honest with people if I can, because I hate feeling like I'm hiding a part of myself. But, not everybody needs to know. If it makes people uncomfortable, I don't feel the need to push them into hearing about it.
So let me have you brought your other partners to family functions and those type of events?
Well, there have been, I guess, two people who were maybe more serious partners. One who was Craig, who's in the film, and is now, I guess, just a friend. He has his own other partners where he is. We still keep in touch. The other is Will. Had they come? Yes, David's parents are actually very fond of both of them, and they've come to family dinners on his side. But in my family, it's not something that I can do. It just makes my parents uncomfortable. They just know he's out there. They just don't want to meet him. They say, I'm sure he's very nice, but we can't do that. It just doesn't fit into what we're comfortable with, what our worldview is. So, my family knows about the film, my larger extended family, but Will doesn't live in Montreal, so it's not often a question. I don't have to think about it. I'm not leaving him at home, sadly, in a corner. But it would be, I guess, if we lived in the same city. Those would be big questions.
What would you say is some of the sacrifices that you have to make as a polyamorous couple?
Sacrifices? I don't feel like there are any sacrifices we make as a poly. I'm speaking much just for myself. I can speak for David, but there are. I can only see real pluses, really. I mean, it certainly helps us to be very honest about things.
You find polyamory helps you be honest?
Yeah, I think so. I don't have to hide. Even a little jokes. I know some couples. I have friends who can't even. It's completely forbidden to even mention their girlfriend. To mention that they thought the waitress was cute. People notice they're alive, even if they're not planning on, doing anything about it. But the thought that their girlfriend or boyfriend would know that they've even noticed another member of the opposite sex or same sex if they're not heterosexual is completely off limits. And I think if you're to me, just the fact that I would have to hide that kind of thing, or just couldn't be honest, even if you don't want to pursue it. I don't know. I think being able to be honest about how you feel is a big part of a relationship. So yeah, no, I think that polyamory has improved. It sounds crazy, but I think it has improved things.
What are some of the absolute pleasures that you experience being polyamorous? Some of the
absolute pleasures. I think knowing. There's a couple pleasures. One is knowing that I have a partner, that we have a stable, loving relationship that's not threatened by the possibility that he could have feelings for someone else is I guess a great pleasure. I don't feel the fear. And it sounds crazy. People say, aren't you worried that he might find someone that he likes better, or you do, or especially, that he'll find someone to trade up or something? And I think that's almost more of a fear in a monogamous relationship, because I feel pretty stable where we are and what we're doing and what we have in our family, but it doesn't preclude, I guess, those natural feelings, and I think it's hard for most people to be everything to their partner. So I think that's a great pleasure. I mean, some people are monogamous. I can't say that for everybody, but for me that is a great pleasure, knowing that possibility exists. There's the pleasure of knowing that I don't often pursue it, but should there be someone who enthralls me so much that I want to try to have another relationship, its possibilities there. I don't have to use it, but I have one friend who was sort of quite sad. He thought, well, for the rest of my life, for the next 30 or 40 years, there's just one sexual partner I will have, or one person I can be that close to. And some people revel in that, but for others, that maybe kind of seems like a sentence in a way. Or sometimes it's a bit of both, I guess. But I guess that's that other pleasure, just the ability to get close to somebody, really close to someone else. The possibility, aside from the person that you're, perhaps if you're in a stable relationship. So, and I should just add that sometimes people don't have to do this from a stable relationship. You could be seeing 2 or 3 partners and live on your own and have that possibility as a polyamorous lifestyle. And there could be a pleasure in that as well, of saying, I want to be open and loving and dating and seeing 3 people who I feel close to, and I don't have to make that choice.
Is David now polyamorous? Because at the time of the documentary, he was still pretty monogamous.
Yeah, he's been quite staunchly monogamous for a long time. But in the past year, there was a very persistent person who's actually involved with Will for the past 2 years, who kind of told David she was interested in him, and interestingly enough, he decided that he was going to give, he thought if I was okay with it, and I could not be okay with it after all my, talk about polyamory and my actions. And so for the past, I guess it's been about 6 or 8 months, he's been involved with another person as well. So I guess he's going to have to give up that title of being the staunch monogamist.
And how does that make you feel, knowing that Will also has another partner right now?
Actually, it sounds crazy, but there's a bit of jealousy, because people always ask about that in polyamory, and I'm certainly not someone who doesn't experience that. I do have a little bit of it. Is she? Oh, maybe she's this. Maybe she's prettier than me. Oh, she's thinner than I am. That's usually not hard. Or whatever the problem is, that you somehow imagine the other person has better qualities. Sometimes it's really shallow. Sometimes it's more profound. But once I got past that, I was actually, in a sense, relieved, because I do have a family and live with David, and Will's single, living at this point. I should just say, I guess it's going to be part of the film, but he's living by himself, and it made me happy that he had another partner, someone to, because we live so far away. But I thought it's good that he has someone else close to him.
Now I have to ask you this. You have a daughter that you're raising with David?
I do.
And
another one on the way, actually. Another child on the way.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I wish you and your family all the best health.
Thanks.
I have to ask you this. Has there ever been any question about the paternity of your first child, given that you were dating both David and Will?
Yeah. Again, anyone who's ever seen the film or knows our lifestyle, that's always... Gosh, people are nosy. That was one of the first questions they ask, is it Dave's kid? I think my father asked that too. I was like, yes it is. Because we live in a very modern age, and you can, we chose to that with Will, that I was, use birth control methods that would ensure that we would not get pregnant, and the opposite with David. We didn't want to have a child. Will did not want to be at that time want to be the father of a child, and lives far away. David very much did want to be. So that's, it was much more practical to have a child with someone you are, connected to day to day, as opposed to somebody who lives 1,000 miles away. So yes, we do get that question, and I will state for the record that Anika, my daughter, is David's child, but Will is her very, very doting and loving uncle.
And what about the second child? Any possibility that it might be Will's?
No, it's still David. Still Will's, Will's still, although Will's now thinking, after being exposed to all these babies, his other partner, Anne, has 2 children, and he's discovered, he thought he never wanted to have kids. He didn't particularly think he liked kids, but he's discovered he really does adore babies and children, and he can't believe how mushy he's become about it, and is now thinking maybe it's not so crazy idea of being a father. But, up until this time, he was quite determined not to be a father. So that's where we've kept it.
Maureen, it's been absolutely great having you on the show.
Well, thanks. I always enjoy talking with you, Frank.
And we have a lovely parting gift for you. It's a bottle of sparkling wine.
Big enough to share at least 3 ways.
Absolutely, big enough to share at least 3 ways. And I certainly hope that you'll raise a glass after your child is born. And remember Frank Talks, and we invite you back to talk to us again about polyamory.
Well, thank you so much, and we will raise a toast to you, Frank, for that.
And why don't you give your website address one more time for anybody who's listening who wants to pick up a DVD copy of that documentary?
Sure. Our website is picturethis.ca, www.picturethis.ca for Canada, and this documentary is called When Two Won't Do, about polyamory and exploration thereof.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. Ladies, do you want the man in your life to understand you on your level? Do you want your man to be able to listen to and address all of your emotional needs? Show him how much you really want your relationship to be the best it can be. Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test makes a perfect gift. The book, written by a man, for men, is endorsed by every woman that reads it. This book is a guide for men to understand exactly what a woman means when she speaks. Is that worth changing your life forever? Buy this book at franktalks.com now.
If you need help with your relationships, my buddy Frank, he's got some tips. Just go to franktalks.com. His advice is better than your mom's. He knows what you're going through, Frank has been there too. So log on to franktalks.com. franktalks.com.
Need help with love, sex, dating and relationships? Visit franktalks.com.
Need help with love, sex, dating, and relationship issues? Help from Frank Kermit, the best-selling author and Canada's most international relationship coach, is only a click away at franktalks.com. Coaching available in person, by phone, and by Skype. For singles, couples, and alternative lifestyles, franktalks.com.
What do you do when you feel like a fool? When your heart has been broken again? Pick up the phone or get onto Skype and talk on a private session. Yeah, get a little help from Frank Talks. Whoa, whoa, get by with a little help from Frank Talks. You gotta try a little help from Frank Talks. your love goes away.
Try coaching one-on-one.
How do I sign up to turn things around?
Just sign up at franktalks.com.
Yeah, get
By with help from Frank Talks.
I get
By with little help from Frank Talks. Time to try a little help from Frank Talks. Does it cost a lot of money?
It's the best rate going around.
Could it cost a lot of money?
Oh, it's worth every cent that you will put down. Yeah.
franktalks.com.
Oh, you got to go to. Get your help from franktalks.com. Yeah, yeah.
Would you believe that Frank gets results?
Yes, we're certain. Just read the reviews.
Frank knows his stuff, and Frank's got the goods.
Good love can soon come to you.